Divorced men. What happened when she pushed you too far and expected you to stay? Story 1. My ex used to joke that I was unbreakable. Her favorite line whenever I'd flinch at something she said was, "Oh, relax. You know you're not going anywhere." The night everything snapped, we were at a mutual friend's birthday. She was already mad I wouldn't co-sign a huge loan for her dream business. So she spent the night taking shots and loudly telling people I was too scared to be with a successful woman. I pulled her aside 3 times. "Stop. We'll talk at home." Instead, she clinked her glass, got everyone's attention and said, "Cheers to my future rich husband, once I upgrade from this one." Then she kissed our friend on the cheek and laughed while everyone stared at me. On the ride home, she kept poking, "You'll forgive me like always. You're obsessed with me. You won't leave." We parked. I sat in silence, hands shaking, realizing it wasn't one joke. It was years of public humiliation she called banter. I took my ring off, set it in the cup holder, and said, as calmly as I could, "You're right. I'm not going anywhere. Tonight. But tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer." She snorted, thought I was bluffing. The next morning I left before she woke up, signed a lease on a small 1-bedroom, and had a consultation by lunch. When the papers were served a week later, she called me screaming, "You're actually doing this? Over a joke?" No, not over a joke. Over the fact she genuinely believed I never would. Story 2. My ex loved to use my mother as a weapon. My mom had a stroke, so she moved in with us temporarily. I cooked, cleaned, did meds, helped her shower. My ex did Instagram stories about how exhausting it was to live with old energy. One day, I came home from work early and heard my mom quietly crying in her room. My ex was standing in the doorway whispering, "If you really cared about him, you'd go to a home. You're ruining our marriage. He'll never leave you, but he might leave me." I froze. My mom saw me behind her and just shook her head like, "Don't." My ex turned around, jumped when she saw me, then instantly flipped. "Babe, I'm just saying we need boundaries. I can't do this anymore. You're choosing her over your wife." I looked at my mom, who was staring at the floor like she'd been here before, and something inside of me just stopped arguing. "You're right," I told my ex. "I am choosing." She smirked like she'd won. "Good. So what home are you putting her in?" I walked past her, hugged my mom, and said, "None. I'm choosing her over you." Within a month, my mom and I were in a small, accessible apartment. The day the divorce papers arrived, my ex texted me, "You're seriously breaking up our marriage over your mother?" No. Over the moment, she made my sick mom feel like a burden for existing, because she assumed I'd swallow it like I always did. Story 3. My ex cheated, but the cheating wasn't what pushed me too far. It was the gaslighting afterward. I found flirty messages to her coworker, screenshots of hotel confirmations. When I confronted her, she burst into tears, then immediately flipped to rage. "If you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have even looked at him. This is your fault." For weeks, she dragged us to couples therapy, painting herself as a confused woman, and me as a cold, unforgiving man. In private, she'd say, "You'll never actually leave. You don't have the spine. You're addicted to me." Our breaking point was a family barbecue. She pulled me aside before we went in. "You're not going to embarrass me. We're a united front. If anyone asks, we're working through normal marriage stuff. Got it?" Inside, she spun this story about my anger issues. My own mother pulled me aside later and asked if I was really yelling that much. That night, I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror and realized she was erasing me in front of my own family. Next session, I walked into therapy with a folder. Messages, photos, timelines. When the therapist asked, "What do you both want?" my ex launched into her speech about my rage. I put the folder on the table and slid it over. "Before we talk about my anger, I think we should all look at the facts." She went pale. The therapist read in silence, then looked at her. "Is this accurate?" She stuttered, tried to spin, but it was the first time her narrative didn't land. I stood up, shook the therapist's hand, and said, "Thank you. This will be my last session. She can continue alone if she wants." In the parking lot, she screamed, "You can't just quit." "We're not done." I buckled my seatbelt, stared straight ahead. "I was done the moment you decided I'd never walk away, and then I did." Story 4. We had been arguing about kids for years. I didn't want them. I was clear from day one. Trauma, finances, mental health, all of it. She agreed at first, then slowly started dropping "when we're parents" into every conversation. One night she admitted she'd forgotten a couple of pills. "It's fine, nothing will happen," she said, laughing it off. My stomach dropped. We had a huge fight. I said if she ever sabotaged birth control again, I'd leave. A few months later, she came home glowing. "We need to talk," she said, holding a positive test like a trophy. I just stared at it. "Did you stop the pill?" She rolled her eyes. Women change their minds. You'll thank me when you're holding our baby. You're not actually leaving over this. You love me too much. That sentence was my switch. Not the pregnancy. The certainty that my consent didn't matter. That my life was something she could rearrange and I would just adapt. I moved into the guest room that night. The next day, I called a lawyer. I told her I would be financially responsible if the child was mine, but I would not stay married to someone who saw me as a breeding plan, not a partner. She screamed, cried, threatened to tell everyone I'd abandoned my family. She genuinely thought public shame would scare me straight back into line. Instead, I documented everything. The forgotten pills, the messages to her friend bragging about finally locking him in. It all went into the file. When she got served, she called my bluff again. You'll come back before the baby's born. No one leaves a pregnant wife. Maybe most people don't. But I wasn't leaving a pregnant wife. I was leaving someone who believed my boundaries were optional. Story 5. My ex turned our breakup into content. That's what finally broke me. We were already on thin ice. She'd mock my salary online, compare me to real men on TikTok, post thirst traps with captions like, deserve better. I kept telling myself, it's just jokes. It's her humor. It's not that deep. Then one night we had a fight because I didn't want to be filmed while half asleep for some couple prank. I said, please don't post me crying or annoyed. I have coworkers on there. She laughed. You're so sensitive. My followers love you. You're not going anywhere anyway. The next day I opened my phone at work and saw a new video. Me sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes red, saying, can you put your phone down, please? She'd added text, when your man is one minor inconvenience away from a meltdown. Hundreds of comments clowning me. A few coworkers had liked it. I felt my face burn in the break room. I texted her, take that down now. That was a private moment. She replied, you're overreacting. It's doing numbers. Don't ruin this for me. That was it. I finished my shift, went home, packed a bag. No yelling, no speech. I just unplugged my PC, grabbed clothes and my passport. She followed me around filming, thinking it was another bit. Look guys, he's having one of his tantrums again. He always calms down. I turned, looked straight into the camera and said, this is the last video you'll ever take of me. Then I walked out. She posted it anyway, expecting the comments to drag me. Instead, half of them turned on her. He told you he was uncomfortable. This is emotional abuse. Girl, you pushed him too far. By the time she realized I wasn't coming back, the narrative had already flipped. She kept calling, texting, promising to delete everything. If we can just go back to how it was. That was the one thing I finally understood. There was no back, only her, a phone, an audience, and a man she assumed would always stay. Story 6. My ex loved the cool girl who doesn't care image online. But behind closed doors, she weaponized every insecurity I had. Anytime I tried to set a boundary, she'd turn it into melodrama. If you ever left me, I'd have nothing. I'd probably just disappear, she'd say, then watch my face to see the panic. I'd back down every time. The night she pushed me too far, we'd been arguing about money. I'd found out she'd taken out a secret credit card in my name. When I confronted her, she shrugged. You'll pay it off. You always do. You're not going anywhere. I told her I was done. Calm, shaking, but done. I said I'd sleep on the couch and call a lawyer in the morning. She walked into the bedroom, slammed the door, and started sending me texts from the other side of the wall. If you leave, I'll hurt myself and it'll be on you. No one will love you after what you did to me. I'll tell everyone you abused me. For years, that kind of message would drag me back into groveling mode. Instead, I called the non-emergency line and explained what was happening. When the officers arrived, she suddenly flipped to sobbing, telling them I was overreacting and controlling. One of them looked me straight in the eye and said quietly, you're not responsible for what another adult chooses to do. Something clicked. I spent the night at a friend's. The next day, I blocked her on everything but email and sent one message. I'd be communicating only through lawyers. She went nuclear. Mass texts to friends, Instagram stories about her evil ex, vague posts hinting I'd done something unspeakable. I didn't respond. Months later, during mediation, she cried and said, I never thought you'd actually leave. I thought if I scared you enough, you'd stay. And that was the moment I realized how far she'd been pushing me. Not because she was broken, but because she was convinced I was. Story 7. I worked 10 years for one promotion. Late nights, weekend calls, missing holidays. My ex said she supported my grind, but really she resented that my life wasn't orbiting around her anymore. When I finally made it to final round interviews for a director role, everything was hanging on one reference check with my current boss. I was nervous but hopeful. The day after the reference call, my boss pulled me into a conference room. He looked uncomfortable. I received an email from your wife, he said slowly. He turned his laptop around. There it was, a long, detailed message from my ex's personal email, listing every fight we'd ever had, framed as, "Concerns about your company promoting someone with anger issues and substance problems." She ended it with, "I'm only telling you this because I care about the company. I don't drink. I've never so much as punched a wall." The examples were private arguments she'd twisted into a horror story. My boss added, "We're not HR. Your personal life is your business." But this caused concern. The promotion went to someone else. That night, I showed her the email. She didn't even deny it. "I just didn't want you to change," she said. "If you get that promotion, you'll work even more. This way, you'll stay home more, with me. You're not leaving over a job." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at this person who torched my career to keep me small. "I am leaving," I said. "Not over a job. Over the fact that you sabotaged me and expected me to thank you." She laughed. "You can't start over at your age. You'll calm down." Instead, I printed the email, handed it to my lawyer, and moved into a crappy studio across town. It took me 2 years to rebuild my reputation enough to move companies. The last time we spoke, she said, "You really threw away our marriage over one mistake." No, I threw it away over the realization that she'd rather see me fail than risk me outgrowing her. Story 8. My ex's favorite hobby was slowly cutting people out of my life, then acting like she was all I had left. First, it was my college friends, their bad influences. Then my sister, she disrespects me. Eventually, even my dad, because he never liked her tone. Every disagreement became an ultimatum. If you loved me, you'd choose me. I kept choosing her, thinking that's what commitment looked like. One Christmas, my family did a small gathering without us because of schedules. I wanted to stop by for an hour. She refused to come. "They don't deserve my time." I went alone. My niece showed me a collage she made of Uncle Jake, all photos from years before my marriage. My mom hugged me and whispered, "We thought we lost you." On the drive home, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just because I wanted to, not because I'd negotiated it with my wife like a warden. I walked in the door and told her we needed to talk about me seeing my family more. She rolled her eyes. "Here we go again? Either they go, or I do." In the past, that sentence terrified me. This time, it just sounded small. "Okay," I said. She smirked, assuming I was caving. "So you'll tell them we're done?" "No," I replied. "I'm telling you we're done. I'm not choosing between my family and my marriage. I'm choosing between control and a life. I pick my life." She went ballistic, screaming, throwing things, calling my mom to say I was abandoning her. She expected everyone to pressure me back into line. Instead, my dad showed up with his truck and started loading my stuff. She stood in the doorway screaming, "You're really leaving?" "For them?" He answered for me. "He's leaving for himself." It was the first time anyone had said that out loud, and the first time I believed I deserved it. Story 9. What finally broke me wasn't our fights. It was watching her weaponize our kids' love. We had a messy separation. No one's perfect, including me. I shut down emotionally, worked insane hours, avoided conflict instead of dealing with it. She'd scream, I'd go silent, we'd repeat. After we split, we had a temporary custody schedule. Week on, week off. The first time my son came over, he clung to me and whispered, "Mommy says you don't really want me. You just don't want to pay her money." I felt something in my chest crack. I didn't say anything bad about her. I just told him, "That's not true. I love you." Over the next few months, the comments got worse. "Mommy says you're dangerous when you're mad. Mommy says if I tell the judge I like it better at her house, I won't have to leave her anymore." He was 8. I confronted my ex. She smirked. "Maybe if you were a better dad, he wouldn't say that. He doesn't like going to your place." Kids are honest. When I told her I'd document the alienation and take it to court, she shrugged. "Judges love mothers. You won't do anything. You're too scared of losing." So I documented everything. Dates, exact quotes, screenshots of her texts. If you keep pushing this, don't be surprised if he starts remembering things about you that the judge won't like. In court, I handed my binder to my lawyer and watched her face slowly fold from arrogance to panic as the judge read, especially the part where she wrote to a friend, "If I can get him labeled unstable, I'll get full custody." He won't fight. He never does. For the first time, someone in authority looked at her and didn't buy the performance. The judge ordered co-parenting classes and a guardian ad litem. When we left the courtroom, she hissed, "You actually turned this on me. You'd really risk your son seeing us like this?" "No," I said. "I'm risking him growing up thinking love means manipulation. That's what I refuse." I didn't stay in the marriage for the kid. I left it for him. Story 10. My ex knew my late dad's car was sacred to me. It was an old, beat-up classic he and I restored together before he died. It barely ran, but I took it out on Sundays, washed it by hand, talked about fixing it up fully someday. She called it the rust bucket. Money got tight. She wanted a luxury vacation. I wanted to catch up on bills. We argued. I said no to the trip, suggested something cheaper. She accused me of prioritizing dead metal over your living wife. One weekend I came home and the driveway looked wrong. The car was gone. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone. "Oh, hey," she said casually. "Good news. I sold the rust bucket. Got a great deal. We can book the trip now." I felt the world tilt. "You sold my dad's car?" She rolled her eyes. "It was junk. You never use it. I'm your family now, not him. And you're not leaving over a car." I didn't yell. The calm scared even me. I asked for the bill of sale, took a photo, and walked out. She kept shouting behind me. "Where are you going? We can talk about this. You always cool off." I drove straight to my brother's place. He stared at me when I told him, then just said, "You're not going back, right?" I didn't. I called a lawyer Monday. When she got served, she texted 100 times. "Are you serious? We can buy another car. You're destroying our marriage over your dad's ghost." No. I was ending a marriage with someone who saw the most important thing I had left of my father, turned it into leverage, and expected me to shrug it off for a week in the sun. When the divorce finalized, my brother surprised me. He'd tracked down the guy who bought the car and rebought it for me. It needed even more work now. But as I stood there looking at the rust and missing parts, it hit me. Some things are worth rebuilding from scratch. My marriage wasn't one of them. Story 11. My ex liked to joke that I was emotionally constipated. She'd say it in front of friends, wait for the laugh, then look at me to see if I'd react. I never did. I'd just swallow it. What she didn't know was that I'd started journaling because therapy was expensive, and I needed somewhere to put the stuff I couldn't say out loud. My anxiety, my fear of turning into my dad, the fact that some days I just didn't want to be alive. One night we had a stupid argument about dishes that turned into a screaming match about how little effort I put into our relationship. I went for a walk to cool off. When I came back, she was on FaceTime with her friends, my journal open on her lap. I heard my own words being read out loud, in her mocking voice. "Sometimes I think she'd be happier without me. Bro, you wrote this like a teenager." Her friends laughed. I froze in the hallway as she flipped pages. "Here's the part where he's scared he'll be a bad father. Good news, King. You don't put in enough effort to get me pregnant anyway." Someone on the call said, "Aw, poor baby," and they all cackled. She noticed me, pointed the camera at my face and said, "Look, the author has arrived." Then to me, "Maybe if you communicated like this out loud, I wouldn't have to snoop." I didn't shout. I walked over, took the notebook gently out of her hands, closed it, and said to the screen, "Hey, could you all hang up for a second?" They went silent and disconnected. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. You're not leaving over a diary." "That's not a diary," I said. "That's the only place I ever felt safe in this marriage." She scoffed. "You're not going anywhere. You can't even order food without panicking. Where would you go?" The truth was I didn't know. But I put the journal in my backpack, grabbed my keys, and went to my brother's couch that night. The next day, I called a therapist and a lawyer. A week later, she texted a wall of messages about how I humiliated her by leaving, how it was just jokes, how I'd ruined her friendships because now they saw her differently, maybe. But at least now they were seeing the real her. Same time I finally let myself see it too. Story 12. My ex played sick for years. First, it was little things. Headaches whenever we had plans with my family, stomach aches when I wanted to go out with friends. I'd cancel everything to stay home. She'd miraculously feel better once we were alone. When I brought it up, she'd pout. "I can't control when my body crashes. Sorry I'm not as strong as you." Instant guilt trip. The night she pushed me too far, we were supposed to sign separation papers. We'd been living like roommates for months, just waiting for the appointment. That morning she called me at work sobbing. "I passed out in the shower," she whispered. "My heart feels weird. I think I need the hospital." I left a meeting, sped home, adrenaline through the roof. She was lying on the couch in sweats, scrolling her phone. No ambulance called. No signs of panic. "I thought you said you needed the ER," I said. She shrugged. "It passed. But obviously I can't do something stressful like signing divorce papers today. My therapist says you don't take my health seriously." Something about the calm, the timing, the way she'd said, "obviously," it clicked. I asked, "Did you even pass out?" She stared at me for a long beat, then, "If you were a decent husband, you wouldn't need proof. I told you I didn't feel well. You're really going to leave a sick woman?" That was the moment I realized this would never end. There would always be another episode, another crash, another crisis preventing anything she didn't want. So I said, "Okay, we won't sign today." She relaxed, smug. Then I added, "I'll just have my lawyer file without you." Her head snapped up. "You wouldn't. Judges hate men who abandon sick wives." "Then we'll show them your Instagram," I said. pulling up a story she'd posted that morning at the gym, 15 minutes before calling me. Smiling, lifting, captioned, "New PR baby." She went pale. She'd forgotten to close friends it. In court, her frail, unwell act didn't land as hard with those screenshots on the record. The judge ordered a standard split. No special sympathy points. To this day, she tells anyone who'll listen that I left her when she was ill. I don't even bother correcting it anymore. The people who know the truth were in that courtroom with us. Story 13. I'm a recovering alcoholic. When my ex and I met, I was 3 years sober and very clear. No booze in the house, no bars on dates. I go to meetings. She said she admired my discipline. Fast forward a few years and she was complaining to friends that I was no fun. When they went on girls' nights, she'd come home tipsy and try to kiss me with a drink still in her hand. I'd back away and she'd pout, "It's like you're allergic to joy." The night she pushed me too far, I came home after a late shift and there was a whole bar set up on the kitchen island. Bottles, mixers, shot glasses. She was in a tight dress, blasting music. "What is this?" I asked. "Spontaneous party," she beamed. "You work too much. We need to live a little. Do one shot with me, just one. Prove you can handle it." I told her no, that this wasn't funny. I could feel my chest tighten, palms sweating, that old craving waking up. She rolled her eyes and picked up her phone. "You know what your problem is? You're still hiding behind this sober identity. If you fall off the wagon, that's on you. I'm not responsible for your issues." Then she turned on live video. "Guys, my husband refuses to toast with me. Tell him one little drink won't kill him." Comments started rolling in from her followers, most of whom had no clue about my history. "Let him drink. He's so boring, lol." Something inside me snapped. Not in an angry way, but in a cold, clear way. I walked over, clicked her live off, and said, "You're right. You're not responsible for my issues. Which is exactly why I'm not staying married to one of them." Her smile dropped. "You're not actually serious. Over alcohol? Over you taking the one thing that almost killed me and turning it into a party game," I said. "Over you betting our marriage on whether I'd relapse." She tried to spin it later. Told people I chose AA over my wife. Like that was a bad thing. My sponsor said something that stuck. "She didn't push you too far, man. She just finally pushed you far enough to see the edge." That's when I realized staying would have been the real relapse. Story 14. We lost a baby. That's the part everyone forgets when they pick sides about the divorce. We were both wrecked. I went quiet, buried myself in work. She got angry. At doctors, at herself, at me, at the universe. We had a small box with everything from that short, brutal chapter. Ultrasound photo. Tiny socks my mom had knitted. The hospital bracelet with my last name and baby printed on it. I kept it on the top shelf of our closet. I didn't open it often, but knowing it was there helped. Months later, she wanted to try again. I wasn't ready. I said I needed more time, maybe therapy together. She heard, "You're broken. I don't want kids with you." One night during yet another fight about it, she stormed into the bedroom, dragged a chair to the closet, grabbed the box and brought it into the living room. "Fine," she said, eyes wild. "If you're never going to move on, I'll help you." Before I could process what was happening, she ripped the ultrasound photo in half. Then again, pieces falling like confetti. She tossed the tiny socks into the fireplace and lit a match. I lunged to stop her, but it was too late. The bracelet melted, plastic curling in the flames. I just stood there, shaking. She looked at me, breathing hard. "There. Now you can't hide in the past. Maybe you'll finally be present with me." She expected me to explode. To scream, punch a wall, give her something big enough to point at and say, "See? Look what you did." Instead, everything went very quiet. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed a duffel, started packing. She followed me, suddenly panicked. "Babe, I didn't mean it like that. I just..." Snapped. "You're not leaving. Not over a few things. That baby wasn't even..." "Don't finish that sentence," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "You burned the only proof we had that they existed. You expected me to hold you while you did it." I moved out within a week. When people asked why, she told them I abandoned her in her grief. I kept my mouth shut. Let her have the narrative. Because the truth is uglier. She didn't just push me too far. She lit the bridge behind me and then acted shocked I couldn't walk back. Story 15. My ex treated my job like it was optional, even though I was the only steady income. I work in a pretty conservative field where reputation matters. Clients, referrals, word of mouth. When our marriage started crumbling, I suggested a trial separation. She refused. "If you move out, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." I didn't even know what that meant. One Friday, after I'd already told her I wanted a divorce, she showed up at my office unannounced. Full makeup, heels, That smile she used when she was about to ruin my day and pretend it wasn't on purpose. She walked right past reception into the open plan area and loudly asked, "Is my husband here? I just need to ask him if I should send the cheating videos to HR or straight to his boss." Heads popped up over cubicles. My stomach dropped. My receptionist tried to calm her down, but she kept talking, voice carrying. "I just don't want to ruin his career, you know? I mean, he ruined our marriage, but I'm not cruel." I pulled her into a conference room and shut the door. "What are you doing?" I hissed. She smirked. "Relax. I didn't show them anything. Yet, but now they know something's up. That should keep you from lawyering up too hard. You're not leaving me to start some shiny new life while I look crazy. If I go down, we both do. The thing is, I never cheated." She'd found old flirty texts from before we got serious and rewritten history in her head. I'd already admitted, apologized, moved on. She hadn't. I looked at the glass walls, my coworkers pretending not to stare. I thought about the years I'd spent building trust here, the reputation I'd guarded. And then I looked back at her and realized she saw all of that as leverage. "You really think I won't walk because you might embarrass me?" I asked. "I know you won't," she said. "You care too much what people think." Something in me finally didn't. I opened the conference room door and, loud enough for nearby desks, said, "Please leave. We're getting divorced and this is not an appropriate place for this conversation." She blinked, thrown off by me saying the D word in public. "Wow, so you're just going to announce it like that?" "Yes," I said. "So there's nothing left to threaten me with." I walked her to the elevator while she hissed, "You'll regret humiliating me." "Maybe I will." HR heard about it, asked if I was okay, suggested security if needed. Not one person brought up her cheating videos. She pushed every button she could reach, believing my fear of embarrassment would chain me to her forever. Turns out, once you've watched someone torch your life in the lobby of your own job, shame feels pretty small compared to the relief of finally hitting close door. Story 16. My ex called herself bad with numbers like it was a cute personality trait. I handled the bills, the taxes, the boring adult stuff. She'd joke, "If you ever leave me, I'll be homeless by Tuesday." Everyone laughed. I didn't. One afternoon, I got a call from the bank's fraud department asking if I'd applied for a second line of credit. I said no. They emailed the application. There was my name, my social, my income, and a signature that kind of looked like mine if you squinted drunk. I confronted her as soon as I got home. She shrugged. "Relax. It's for the kitchen remodel. We both benefit." I knew you'd say no, so I just skipped to the part where you get over it. I told her this was literal fraud. She rolled her eyes. "We're married. You can't steal from your own husband. Besides, what are you gonna do, have me arrested? You're not leaving over a piece of paper." I spent that night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, realizing it wasn't one piece of paper. It was the secret Afterpay accounts. The "oops, forgot to tell you, Klarna." The "can you just move money from your savings to cover this?" Next day, I made copies of everything and went to a lawyer. He looked at the forged signature and said, "You understand this is a crime, right? Even in marriage." When she got served, she stormed into my work parking lot furious. "You think the cops are going to drag a wife away in handcuffs? You won't do it. You're too soft." I said, "Try opening another account. See how soft I am." I didn't press charges in the end. I just made sure every financial institution knew not to accept anything without my in-person signature. But the marriage? That overdraft finally hit. Turned out, the only thing she'd ever been good at with numbers was counting on me never walking away. Story 17. My ex loved playing the scared little wife when it suited her. Anytime we argued and I raised my voice even a bit, she'd flinch, look at the door and say, "If the neighbors heard you, they'd think you were dangerous." I'd back down immediately. I grew up with a dad who actually was dangerous. I swore I'd never be that guy. One night, we had a fight about her staying out until 3 a.m. and coming home blackout drunk with some dude's jacket on. I said I couldn't live like this, that something had to change. She walked into the hallway, dialed her phone on speaker and said loud enough for the neighbors, "Hi, yeah, my husband is screaming and I'm scared." Then to me, eyes cold, "Keep going. Let's see who they believe." My blood ran cold. I grabbed my keys and wallet and went to leave so I wouldn't be there when the cops showed up. She blocked the door. "If you walk out, that makes you look guilty." "Guilty of what?" I asked. She smiled. "A tight, mean little thing. Whatever, I decide later." Something inside me snapped into place. I sat on the couch and waited. When the officers came, I was the one who asked them to come in, told them calmly what happened, even offered to leave for the night if that made her feel safer. She tried to turn on the tears. No marks, no damage, nothing but trembling hands that stopped shaking the second they turned away. One officer asked her if she wanted to file a report. For a second, I watched her weigh it like a chess move. That was my line. The second they left, I packed a bag. She followed me, shrieking, "You're not seriously leaving?" I didn't actually say you hit me. It was just leverage. Couples do worse. You almost weaponized the one thing I'm most terrified of becoming, I said. You turned my biggest fear into your get-out-of-accountability card. We were divorced within the year. She tells people I ran at the first sign of conflict. No. I ran the second she made it clear she'd rather see me in handcuffs than see herself in the wrong. Story 18. My ex had this line she loved. You owe me intimacy. That's what marriage is. Whenever I was stressed or depressed and didn't want to hook up, she'd guilt trip me. If I said no as often as you do, you'd leave. I'm just asking for basic needs. I tried explaining mental health, meds killing my drive, work pressure. She'd respond with TikToks about withholding affection is abuse. One night I came home completely wiped. Emergency shift, no sleep, bad news about a coworker's accident. I told her I had nothing left, that I just needed to shower and pass out. She pouted, then disappeared into the bedroom. 10 minutes later, my phone started vibrating. Group chat. Her friends, and my sister. Screenshot. A paragraph she'd typed about how I refused to touch her for weeks, and how she was starting to feel like his roommate, not his wife. She ended with, "Do you guys think this is grounds to leave? Because I'm dying over here." My sister texted me separately. "Hey, is everything okay?" I wanted the floor to swallow me. I walked into the bedroom and asked, "Why would you send that to my family?" She smirked. "Maybe public pressure will motivate you. You're not leaving over a conversation." "That wasn't a conversation," I said. "That was public shaming. About something you know is tied to my meds and my brain, not how I feel about you." She rolled her eyes. "So now I'm a monster for wanting my husband to want me?" I didn't have an answer for her. I just realized we weren't talking about intimacy. We were talking about entitlement. The next week, I talked to my doctor, my therapist, and a lawyer. When she got the papers, she called me hysterical. "You're divorcing me because you don't like being called out? Grow up." No. I was divorcing her because no stopped being a sentence and became a challenge to break. Funny thing, once I left, my drive came back slowly. Turns out, nothing kills desire faster than knowing someone thinks your body is an obligation they're owed on demand. Story 19. I'm not from here. I came on a student visa, then work, then finally applied for residency. My ex is from a big, loud local family. At first, they loved the exotic fiancé. Then they realized I didn't worship their daughter on command. Anytime we fought, she'd say, "Careful. Immigration doesn't like unstable marriages." At first, I thought she was just being dramatic. Then I found out she'd actually called my lawyer's office with questions about what would happen if we divorced before my status was finalized. The night she pushed me too far, we were arguing about her draining our joint savings to help her brother's latest startup, which was really just him reselling sneakers and weed. I said no, that money was for our filing fees and future home. She laughed. "If you get deported, I'm not staying in this apartment anyway. Might as well help my family." I went silent. She saw it land and doubled down. "Relax. You're not going anywhere. You need me. They'll ask why your American wife left you. What would you even say?" For years, she'd dangled my legal status like a leash, convinced I'd never risk it. So I did something that surprised even me. I told my immigration attorney everything. Every text where she threatened to call and tell them you only married me for papers. Every time she'd said, "If you don't behave, I'll make sure you go back." He sighed and said, "We hear this a lot. You're not the first. Document it. Leave if you need to. Your case doesn't vanish because your spouse is volatile." Once I knew that, the spell broke. When I moved out, she lost it. "You think this country will pick you over a citizen? I'll ruin you. I'll tell them you confessed. Then we'll let them read the whole chat history," I said. "Not just the parts you like." She didn't believe I'd actually submit her threats as evidence, until my lawyer requested her messages formally. Suddenly, the threats stopped. We divorced. My residency got approved months later. She still tells people I used her for a passport. Maybe I did use her, for a while, to survive. But she used my fear of losing everything as a cage. And once I realized the lock was more rust than metal, I walked out. Story 20. My ex had this weird obsession with my best friend Liam. At first, it was harmless. "He's so funny. Why aren't you more like him?" Then it turned into constant comparisons. Liam surprises his girlfriend with trips. Liam posts her every day. Liam would never forget an anniversary. I brushed it off until I noticed she started dressing up more when he came over. Inside jokes, long hugs, little digs at me in front of him, followed by, "Relax, we're just playing." One night after a party, she was drunk and he was crashing on our couch. She insisted we all play some drinking game. Halfway through, she suggested a truth round. Her truth. "If you had met me first, who would you have chosen?" Liam laughed it off. "You guys are perfect together." He went to bed early. When he left the next morning, she was sulking. "He totally wants me. He's just scared to say it. I told her to cut it out, that it was disrespectful to both of us. She smiled. You're insecure. You know you're not leaving anyway. Chill. A month later, I found messages on her iPad. Late-night chats with Liam, her venting about our fights, exaggerating things I'd said, calling me cold and dead in bed, dropping photos of herself that weren't nudes but weren't exactly friendly either. To his credit, he shut it down. This feels wrong. You need to talk to him, not me. When I confronted her, she flipped it. So now I can't have friends? You're policing my conversations? You're not leaving over some messages that he didn't even respond to. I said, it's not the messages. It's that you used my best friend as both an audience and a weapon. She scoffed. Oh, please. What are you gonna do? Break up the group? In the end, I didn't have to. When I told Liam I was filing for divorce, he voluntarily cut her off and offered to write a statement for my lawyer about the messages. The night I moved out, she sent me a long text. You're throwing away our marriage because you can't handle a little harmless flirting. Pathetic. Harmless flirting doesn't involve rehearsing a backup boyfriend in your husband's skin. I lost a marriage, but I kept my spine. And somehow, my best friend. She pushed until she thought I'd finally cling tighter from fear of losing everything. Instead, I learned I'd already lost her a long time ago. Story 21. I grew up religious. Not Bible verse in bio, religious. Actual, kneel on hard pews, every Sunday religious. When my ex and I got married, she swore she respected that, even if her faith was more Instagram than internal. When our marriage started cracking, we agreed to see the pastor together. I thought it'd be about communication, resentment, the usual. Instead, she turned it into a performance. Tears on demand, tremble in her voice. I just don't feel spiritually safe with him. I sat there, stunned, taking hits so she wouldn't look bad in front of the church. The night she pushed me too far, it was during a marriage seminar at church. We were in a circle with other couples, and the pastor asked everyone to share a struggle they were working through privately. She stood up, wiped fake tears, and said, "My husband struggles with lust." Then she proceeded to tell a whole room of acquaintances that I watched porn, constantly followed random women online, and couldn't control his eyes. She left out the part where we'd talked about it years ago, and I'd actually changed. To hear her tell it, I was one click away from blowing up our marriage with an affair. People gasped. Older women shook their heads sadly. I just sat there burning alive in my chair. On the drive home, I said, "You humiliated me. That was supposed to be private." She shrugged. Sometimes men need public accountability. Maybe now you'll take it seriously. You're not leaving over truth, are you? That word, truth, broke something. None of what she said was current truth. It was a character she'd built for me so she could play the suffering holy wife. The next week, I asked for a private meeting with the pastor. I brought screenshots, my screen time tracking, my filters, conversations where she sent me thirst traps and then later called me a pervert for saving them. He looked uncomfortable. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" "Because she was counting on me not to," I said. "Because she knows I care more about protecting her reputation than my own." I filed for divorce that month. When she heard, she told the church I'd chosen sin over marriage, that I ran when things got hard. The funny thing, leaving the marriage was the first time it felt like my faith was actually mine, not a costume she put on me when she needed an audience. Story 22. My ex insisted on couples therapy but treated it like a competition, not a clinic. Every session started with her. Polished speech, curated examples of my emotional neglect. Tears right when the therapist leaned in. I stumbled through my side, clumsy and raw. She'd glance at me like, "You're losing this round." Our therapist suggested we each keep a private journal about how we felt between sessions, and maybe share pieces when we were ready. I took it seriously. I wrote about wanting to leave, about feeling like a paycheck, about being scared I'd never be enough for her. One night I came home and she was sitting on the couch with my notebook open, phone out, snapping photos. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't even look guilty. "I'm prepping for our next session. I can't go in unprepared like you do." "That's private," I said. She snorted. "Nothing's private in marriage. And honestly, thank you. This is gold." "Sometimes I fantasize about disappearing," she laughed. "I can't wait to show her how unstable you are." The next session, before I could speak, she pulled out printed pages. My pages. "I found something," she said sweetly, handing them to the therapist. "I think it's important context." As they read, my ears rang. My worst thoughts, stripped of nuance, held up as proof that I was dangerous, depressed, ready to snap. The therapist looked at me carefully. "Have you had any active plans to harm yourself?" I wanted to sink through the floor. I said no. My ex cut in. "He says that, but look at page 4. Something in me went cold. I realized this woman didn't want healing. She wanted a documented case file that proved I was the problem. So when she left, or when I finally did, she'd have a villain monologue ready. When we left the office, she smiled. That went well. She finally sees what I'm dealing with. You're not actually going to quit therapy now, are you? I'm not quitting therapy, I said. I'm just quitting doing it with you. I found my own therapist. Then a lawyer. She told anyone who'd listen that I refused to work on the marriage. The therapist eventually refused to keep seeing us as a couple, saying there was a lack of safety and trust in the process. Yeah, because for her, my pain wasn't something to heal. It was something to weaponize. Story 23. I had a dog before I had a wife. Rescue mutt, anxious, weird, perfect. He got me through my dad's death, my worst depressive episode, everything. When I proposed, I joked, "This is a package deal. You say yes to both of us." She said she loved him. And at first it looked true. Photo shoots, matching bandanas, dog mom mug. But when we moved in together, the cracks showed. He sheds too much. He smells like dog. Why does he need so much attention? I offered training classes, air purifiers, extra vacuuming. I did every walk, every vet visit. She still complained. One weekend I had to go out of town for a funeral. She stayed home for work. I left a detailed schedule. Feeding times, walks, emergency vet number. She rolled her eyes. He's a dog, not an infant. Halfway through the trip, I texted to check in. No response. A few hours later, everything's fine. When I came back, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No paws on the floor, no whining at the door. I asked, "Where's Max?" She didn't meet my eyes. "Don't freak out. My coworker's friend has a farm, tons of land, dogs everywhere. Max is better off there. He was miserable cooped up here." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "You gave away my dog?" She crossed her arms. "Our apartment is too small. You're never home. He was a burden. You're not seriously going to leave me over an animal." I called every shelter, every vet, every number I could think of. She refused to give me the contact. "They don't want to be bothered," she snapped. That night I slept in the guest room, clutching an empty collar. My friends were split. Half said, "Yeah, she crossed a line." The other half said, "It's just a dog." But they hadn't been there when I was at my lowest, and Max put his dumb heavy head in my lap and stayed until I stopped shaking. Within a week I filed for divorce. She was stunned. "We can get another dog," she said. I said, "I can't get another version of me that didn't understand who I married." I never found Max. I still check rescue pages sometimes. I did, however, find out a lot about myself. Apparently my too far wasn't cheating or yelling. It was waking up and realizing the person sharing my bed could take the one creature that ever made me feel safe and treat him like clutter.